The morning sun was just beginning to warm the cold waters of Monterey Bay when Dr. Sarah Chen stepped onto the research boat. She had done this hundreds of times before, but today felt different. The ocean was calm, almost too calm, as if it was holding its breath for something important to happen. Sarah was 35 years old and had spent the last 10 years studying whales. She knew these waters like the back of her hand. Every morning, she would go out with her small team to count whales and check on their health. It was a job she loved more than anything else in the world. "Ready to go, Captain Mike?" She called out to the boat's driver, adjusting her blue research jacket against the morning chill. Mike, an older man with gray hair and kind eyes, nodded and started the engine. The smell of salt water filled the air as they moved away from the dock. Sarah stood at the front of the boat with her special binoculars. These weren't regular binoculars. They had a special camera inside that could take pictures of the whales from far away. Her two assistants, Tom and Lisa, sat nearby with their laptops open, ready to record anything interesting they might see. They had been out on the water for about 2 hours when Sarah noticed something strange. Most whales would come up for air, then dive back down smoothly. But there was one whale that wasn't moving like the others. It was staying near the surface, moving slowly and awkwardly, like someone who was very tired or sick. "Mike, can you take us closer?" Sarah asked, her voice filled with concern. "There's something wrong with that whale over there." She pointed toward the large shape in the water about half a mile away. As they got closer, Sarah's worry grew stronger. The whale was a female humpback, probably around 45 feet long. But something was very wrong with her skin. Instead of the smooth, dark surface that healthy whales had, this whale's skin was covered in strange patches that shouldn't be there. "Tom, get the drone ready," Sarah said, not taking her eyes off the whale. "We need to get a better look." Tom quickly set up their research drone, a small flying camera that could take clear pictures from above the water. The whale surfaced again, and this time Sarah could see it better. The poor animal was moving so slowly that even their boat, going at its lowest speed, had to keep stopping to avoid getting too close. Through her binoculars, Sarah could see that the whale's skin was literally crawling with tiny creatures. "Lisa, are you getting this?" Sarah asked, her voice tense. Lisa was taking pictures with their long-range camera, her fingers moving quickly over her laptop keyboard as she recorded everything they were seeing. The drone's footage started coming in on their computer screens, and everyone on the boat fell silent. The whale's entire body was covered in what looked like moving patches. Sarah had seen parasites on whales before. It was normal for whales to have some, but she had never seen anything like this. There were thousands upon thousands of them, covering the whale like a living blanket. "We need to call this in," Sarah said, reaching for the boat's radio. "This is beyond anything I've seen before." She knew that without help, this whale wouldn't survive much longer. The parasites were literally eating her alive. As she made the call to the Marine Mammal Rescue Center, Sarah kept watching the whale. The huge animal moved through the water with obvious pain and difficulty. Every now and then, she would roll to one side, as if trying to scratch herself against the water, but it wasn't helping. The whale was dying. Sarah could see it in the way she moved, and how thin she looked, in the desperate way she kept trying to rid herself of the parasites. But Sarah also knew something else. She wasn't going to let this whale die without trying to save her. "We'll call her Luna," Sarah said softly, still watching through her binoculars. The name just came to her, maybe because of the whale's silvery color in the morning light, and we're going to help her. The sun was now high in the sky, and the day was warming up. But Sarah felt cold inside as she watched Luna struggle. She had no idea how they were going to help this massive animal, but she knew they had to try. Sometimes, the biggest challenges came with no warning, on what started as just another ordinary day at sea. The afternoon sun beat down on the research boat as Sarah and her team worked quickly to understand what was wrong with Luna. They had been following the whale for 3 hours now, and what they were seeing through their drone cameras made their hearts sink. "I've never seen anything like this," Tom said, his eyes glued to the computer screen. The drone was flying just 50 feet above Luna, sending back crystal-clear videos of her condition. The pictures were shocking. Luna's dark skin, which should have been smooth and healthy, was covered in what looked like moving carpets. Whale lice and barnacles, which were normal for whales to have in small numbers, had grown out of control. They were everywhere, on her back, her sides, and even around her blowhole where she needed to breathe. Sarah counted the parasites in just one small area of Luna's skin using the drone's camera. In a patch no bigger than a dinner plate, she found over 300 parasites. Doing some quick math in her head, she realized there must be more than 100,000 parasites on Luna's entire body. Lisa, are you getting all these readings? Sarah asked, turning to her assistant who was taking notes. Lisa nodded, her face worried as she typed. The computer was showing that Luna's swimming speed was only half of what it should be. The poor whale was exhausted from carrying all these unwanted passengers. The team watched as Luna came up for air. Usually, whales would take a big breath and then dive deep for several minutes. But Luna was staying near the surface, breathing more often than she should. She was struggling, like someone trying to run a marathon while carrying a heavy backpack. Look at these marks, Sarah pointed to the screen. The drone's camera showed deep cuts and sores on Luna's skin where the parasites had been feeding. Some areas were so bad that they looked like small caves dug into her flesh. These wounds would let in salt water and could cause dangerous infections. Captain Mike, who had been quiet most of the time, spoke up. In 30 years of sailing these waters, I'd never seen a whale in such bad shape, he said, shaking his head. Those parasites are literally eating her alive. Sarah knew they needed to document everything carefully. She asked Tom to fly the drone in a pattern that would record every part of Luna's body. They needed to show other scientists exactly how bad the situation was if they wanted to get help. As they watched Luna through the drone's camera, they saw something that made them all gasp. When the whale rolled to her side, they could see that the parasites had even invaded the sensitive area around her eyes. This would make it hard for her to see where she was going or find food. She's not eating enough, Lisa said, pointing to new data on her screen. Their measurements showed that Luna was much thinner than a healthy whale her size should be. The parasites were stealing her energy, and she couldn't eat enough to keep up. Sarah picked up the boat's radio again. This time, she called not just the Marine Mammal Rescue Center, but also several other research stations along the coast. They needed all the help they could get. This is Dr. Sarah Chen from the Monterey Bay Research Station, she said into the radio. We have a severe case of parasitic infestation on a female humpback whale, requesting immediate assistance and consultation. She gave them their location and a quick summary of what they had found. As the sun began to set, the team kept watching Luna. The whale's movements were getting slower, and she seemed to be having more trouble breathing. Every time she came up for air, they could hear a wheezing sound from her blowhole. We can't leave her, Sarah said firmly, even though it was getting dark. Tom, set up the night vision on the drone. Lisa, call for the backup research boat. We need to track her through the night. The team prepared for a long night at sea. They set up their equipment with lights and started a shift schedule so someone would be watching Luna at all times. As the stars came out over the ocean, they could see Luna's massive shape moving slowly through the dark water, fighting for every breath. Sarah stood at the rail of the boat, watching the whale's outline in the gathering darkness. Tomorrow, help would arrive from other research stations. But tonight, it was just them and Luna, in a race against time to save her life. The next morning, Sarah's small research boat was joined by 3 other boats filled with marine scientists and rescue experts. They formed a loose circle around Luna, keeping their distance so they wouldn't scare her. The morning air was filled with the sound of engines idling and radio conversations as the teams tried to figure out what to do. Dr. Mark Thompson, the head of the Marine Mammal Rescue Center, stood on his boat with a troubled look on his face. He was an older man with white hair who had helped save many whales before, but this was different. We can't use our usual methods, he said to Sarah over the radio. If we tried to get too close with the boats, we might stress her even more. The normal way to help a whale was to approach it with boats and use special tools to free it from nets or ropes. But Luna wasn't tangled in anything. Her problem was all over her body. Sarah watched through her binoculars as Luna came up for another breath. The whale's movements were even slower than yesterday. The parasites were winning, slowly draining Luna's strength hour by hour. What about using divers? Lisa suggested, looking up from her computer. But Captain Mike shook his head. Too dangerous, he said. Even a tired whale could kill a diver by accident with one small movement, and we don't even know if Luna would let anyone get close to her. The scientists tried everything they could think of from a distance. They used underwater speakers to play soothing whale sounds, hoping to keep Luna calm, They tried using special cameras that could look under the water to study the parasites better. One boat even had a robot submarine that could swim near Luna to take pictures. But nothing they tried helped solve the main problem: how to get the parasites off Luna without putting people in danger or scaring her away. "Look at these readings," Tom said in the afternoon, pointing to his screen. The drone was showing that Luna's body temperature was too high. The wounds from the parasites were causing an infection, making her sick as well as tired. Sarah felt helpless as she watched more boats arrive. Now there were news crews too. Their cameras pointed at Luna whenever she came up for air. The story of the dying whale had spread quickly, and people wanted to know what was happening. Dr. Thompson called all the team leaders to a meeting on his boat. Sarah looked around at the worried faces of the other scientists as they tried to come up with a plan. They had dealt with injured whales, tangled whales, and beached whales before, but no one had ever tried to remove thousands of parasites from a whale in the open ocean. "We could try spraying her with special medicine from the boats," one scientist suggested. "The medicine would wash away in the water before it could work," another answered, shaking his head. "What about catching her in nets and treating her near the shore? She's too weak to survive being caught in nets, and we don't have anything big enough to hold a whale her size." As the day went on, Luna's condition got worse. She was now swimming in small circles, but she was too tired to go anywhere else. Sometimes she would roll onto her side, showing her belly covered in parasites, as if she was begging for help. Sarah went back to her boat feeling frustrated and scared. They had all this equipment, all these smart people, but they couldn't figure out how to help one sick whale. The sun was setting again, painting the sky orange and pink, but no one felt like enjoying the beautiful view. That evening, as the teams prepared for another night of watching Luna, Sarah's radio crackled to life. It was Dr. Thompson. "I've called someone," he said, his voice tired but hopeful. "He's different. Some people think he's crazy, but he's helped whales in ways no one else has tried before. He'll be here tomorrow morning." "Who is he?" Sarah asked, curious about who this mystery person might be. "His name is James Forrester, but everyone calls him Jim. He's been diving with whales for 25 years, and he might be Luna's only chance." Sarah looked out at Luna's dark shape in the water. The whale was still hanging on, fighting for her life. Tomorrow would bring someone new, someone who might have a different way to help. But would Jim arrive in time? And what could one person do that all these scientists and their equipment couldn't? As the stars came out, Sarah whispered, "Hold on, Luna. Just hold on a little longer. Help is coming." The morning fog was still thick over Monterey Bay when Jim Forrester arrived. He didn't come in a big rescue boat or with fancy equipment. Instead, he showed up in an old pickup truck with a small rubber boat tied to the top and a few large waterproof cases in the back. Jim was not what Sarah had expected. He was in his 50s, with weathered skin and gray hair tied back in a ponytail. He wore faded jeans and an old diving shirt that had seen better days, but his eyes were sharp and alert as he looked out at the water where Luna was swimming. "Tell me everything you know about her," Jim said, not wasting any time with small talk. His voice was quiet but confident, like someone who knew exactly what he was doing. Sarah and Dr. Thompson showed Jim all their drone footage and data from the past 2 days. Jim watched everything carefully, making notes in a small waterproof notebook. He didn't say much, just nodded and wrote things down. "I need to watch her for a while," he said when they were done. "Just her and me, no other boats around." Some of the other scientists started to protest, but Dr. Thompson held up his hand to quiet them. "Let him work," Dr. Thompson said. "He's done things with whales that none of us thought were possible." Jim took his small rubber boat out alone. He stayed far enough away that Luna wouldn't feel threatened, but close enough to see her clearly. Hour after hour, he watched how she moved, how she breathed, and how she reacted to sounds in the water. Sarah kept track of him through her binoculars. Sometimes Jim would write in his notebook. Other times, he would just sit perfectly still, watching Luna with complete focus. He stayed out there all day, not coming back even for lunch. As the sun was setting, Jim finally returned to the main research boat. Everyone gathered around to hear what he thought. "She's smart," Jim said, pulling out his notebook. "She knows she's in trouble, and she's trying to tell us something." He showed them his notes. He had drawn detailed pictures of Luna's movements, marking every time she rolled to one side or came up for air. "Look at this pattern," he said, pointing to his drawings. She's not just swimming randomly, she's showing us where it hurts the most. And she's staying in this area because she knows we're trying to help. Then Jim told them his plan. It was something no one had ever tried before. He wanted to free dive with Luna, to swim right next to her without any scuba tanks or noisy equipment. "I got some special tools," he explained, opening one of his waterproof cases. Inside was a strange-looking device that he had built himself. It makes sounds that parasites hate, but whales can barely hear. And I got a special medicine that will help kill the parasites without hurting Luna or the ocean. The other scientists looked worried. Swimming with a whale, especially a sick one, was incredibly dangerous. One small movement from Luna could seriously hurt or kill a person. "I've been swimming with whales for 25 years, Jim said calmly, seeing their concerned faces. "I know their language, not just their sounds, but how they move, how they think. Luna needs someone to help her, and she needs to trust that someone." Dr. Thompson spoke up. "Jim, even if you can get close to her, how long would you need to treat all those parasites?" "At least 6 hours in the water," Jim answered. "Maybe more. I'll need to do it in stages, letting her get used to me slowly." He looked out at Luna, who was still swimming slowly in circles. "But we need to start tomorrow. She's getting weaker every day." Sarah watched as Jim started getting his equipment ready. He worked carefully, checking every piece of his gear like a surgeon preparing for a difficult operation. "Do you really think this will work?" she asked him quietly. Jim looked up from his work. "In all my years of diving with whales, I've learned one thing," he said. "They're not just animals we need to save. They're intelligent beings we need to work with. Tomorrow, I'm not going to try to help Luna. I'm going to ask her to let me help her. There's a big difference." As night fell, the team started preparing for the next day. Jim's plan was dangerous and had never been tried before. But watching Luna struggle in the water, they knew they had to try something different. Tomorrow would either be a breakthrough in whale rescue, or it could go terribly wrong. Early the next morning, before the sun came up, Jim gathered everyone on the main research boat. He spread out his drawings and equipment on a table, explaining his plan in detail. The other scientists listened with worried faces as they realized just how dangerous his idea was. "The first thing we need to do is clear all the other boats away," Jim said, pointing to his hand-drawn map. "Too many boats make too much noise underwater. Luna needs to feel calm." He looked at each person around the table. "I need at least half a mile of clear water around her." Dr. Thompson shook his head. "Jim, what you're suggesting is incredibly risky. Nobody has ever tried to swim this close to a sick whale before." "Nobody has ever needed to," Jim replied calmly. He picked up the special device he had built. It looked like a small silver tube with buttons on one end. "This creates sounds that make parasites uncomfortable. They'll start letting go of Luna's skin when they hear it." Sarah looked closely at the device. "Won't that sound hurt Luna too?" Jim smiled. "That's the clever part. Whales hear different frequencies than these small parasites. It's like playing a dog whistle. Humans can't hear it, but dogs can. This sound bothers the parasites, but is just a quiet buzz to Luna." He then showed them his special medicine. It was a thick green liquid in a waterproof container. "This is made from natural sea plants," he explained. "When I put it on the parasites, it makes them let go, but it won't harm Luna or any other sea life." The scientists passed around the container, studying it carefully. Some of them still looked doubtful. "But how will you stay underwater long enough?" Lisa asked. "Even the best divers can only hold their breath for a few minutes." Jim opened another case and pulled out what looked like a modified snorkel. "This helps me breathe while staying horizontal in the water. No bubbles, no tanks, no noise. Just me swimming quietly beside her." He then showed them his special wetsuit. It was dark gray, like Luna's skin. "Whales are used to seeing dark shapes in the water. This helps me blend in better than a regular bright-colored diving suit." But the most controversial part of his plan was still to come. "I need to swim with her for at least 6 hours, Jim said. "And I need to get close enough to touch her." This made everyone gasp. Getting that close to a whale, especially a sick one, was usually considered suicide. "Absolutely not," one of the senior scientists said. "It's too dangerous. If she hits you with her tail or rolls over suddenly, you'll die instantly." Jim stayed calm. "I understand the risk, But Luna is intelligent. She knows she needs help. I've watched how she moves. She's being careful, trying not to hurt herself more. I believe she'll be careful with me too. He showed them more of his notes about Luna's behavior. See how she rolls to one side, showing us her wounds? That's not random. She's asking for help, in her own way. The argument went on for hours. Some scientists supported Jim's plan, saying they had no other choice. Others thought it was too risky and wanted to try different methods first. But as they argued, Luna got weaker. Finally, Dr. Thompson made his decision. "We'll do it Jim's way," he announced. "But we need safety measures in place." They spent the rest of the morning setting up emergency plans. 2 small rescue boats would stay nearby, ready to help if something went wrong. Divers with emergency oxygen tanks would be ready to jump in. They even had a helicopter on standby at the nearest airport. Sarah watched as Jim prepared his equipment. He checked everything 3 times, making sure nothing could go wrong. His face was serious but calm, like someone who knew exactly what they were doing. "Aren't you scared?" she asked him quietly. Jim paused in his work. "Being scared is good," he said. "It keeps you careful. But Luna is more scared than I am right now. She's dying, and she knows it. Sometimes you have to be brave to help someone who needs you." As the morning turned to afternoon, Jim got ready for his first attempt. He would try to swim near Luna for just a few minutes, letting her get used to his presence. If that worked, he would slowly start treating the parasites. Everyone watched nervously as Jim put on his special wetsuit. Tomorrow would be the big rescue attempt, but today's test would show if his plan had any chance of working. The fate of Luna, and possibly Jim's life, would depend on what happened in the next few hours. The sun was just rising when Jim stepped onto the small platform at the back of his rubber boat. He was already wearing his special gray wetsuit, and his equipment was strapped tightly to his belt. The morning air was cold, but he didn't seem to notice. "Remember," he said to the rescue teams on their boats nearby, "no matter what happens, stay back unless I give the emergency signal." He touched the small red button on his belt that would send out a loud alarm if he needed help. Sarah watched through her binoculars as Jim sat on the edge of his boat, just watching Luna swim. The huge whale was moving slowly in circles, coming up for air every few minutes. Even from far away, they could see how sick she looked. After about an hour of watching, Jim slowly slid into the water. He didn't make a splash or any sudden movements. He just quietly slipped under the surface, like a seal going for a swim. Everyone held their breath as they watched Jim swim closer to Luna. He moved very slowly, staying on the surface where Luna could see him. Through the drone camera flying above, they could see both Jim and Luna in the clear water. "Look at that," Dr. Thompson whispered, pointing to the drone screen. Luna had changed her swimming pattern. Instead of going in circles, she was now swimming in a straight line, very slowly, as if she was waiting for Jim to catch up. Jim got closer and closer to Luna. He was now only about 30 feet away from her, close enough to see her clearly underwater, but still far enough to get away if she made any sudden moves. He stayed there for a while, just swimming parallel to her, letting her get used to his presence. Then something amazing happened. Luna started to slow down even more. She rolled slightly to one side, showing Jim the part of her body that had the most parasites. It was as if she understood that he was there to help. "She's accepting him," Sarah said excitedly into her radio. "She's actually asking for help." Very slowly, Jim swam closer to Luna. Now he was only 10 feet away from her massive body. One small movement from her tail could seriously hurt him, but Luna stayed very still. Only her fins moved gently, keeping her floating in place. Jim took out his special device that made sounds to disturb the parasites. Before turning it on, he gently tapped it against his hand underwater 3 times. Later, he would explain that this was his way of telling Luna something was about to happen. When he turned on the device, they could see immediate results. Through the drone's camera, they watched as parasites started falling off Luna's skin where Jim pointed the device. They dropped away like leaves falling from a tree. Hour after hour, Jim worked methodically. He would swim alongside Luna, treating one small area at a time. Every now and then, he would surface for air, but he always went back to the exact same spot where he left off. Luna seemed to understand this pattern and would slow down or stop whenever Jim needed to breathe. Sarah and the team kept careful notes of everything that happened. They noticed that Luna's breathing was becoming more regular, less stressed. The parasites were falling away in clouds now, especially when Jim added his special medicine to the areas he had treated with sound. "This is incredible," Dr. Thompson said, watching the drone footage. "I've never seen anything like it." She's completely cooperating with him. The most amazing moment came about 4 hours into the rescue. Luna had been floating quietly while Jim worked on a particularly bad patch of parasites near her fin. Suddenly, she let out a long, low sound, a whale song that everyone could hear even above the water. "She's talking to him," Lisa said, quickly recording the sound on their equipment. "She knows he's helping her." Jim kept working until the sun was low in the sky. He had managed to treat about half of Luna's body, focusing on the areas that were hurting her the most. When he finally climbed back into his boat, he was shivering and exhausted, but smiling. "She's ready for more tomorrow," he said, wrapping himself in warm towels. "She trusts us now. Did you see how still she stayed? She knew exactly what we were trying to do." The teams watched as Luna swam in a wide circle around their boats before heading to deeper water for the night. She was moving better already, and the treated areas of her skin looked cleaner and healthier. The first day of rescue had worked better than anyone had hoped, but they still had a lot more work to do, and Luna wasn't safe yet. Tomorrow would be another long day of careful work, but now they knew it was possible. They had given Luna something she hadn't had in a long time: hope. The second day of rescue brought surprises that no one could have predicted. It started early in the morning when the teams arrived at the spot where they had last seen Luna. Usually, they had to search for a while to find her, but this time, Luna was waiting for them. "Look at this," Sarah said, pointing to her computer screen. The tracking device they had placed in the water showed that Luna had stayed in the same area all night, swimming in lazy circles. It was as if she knew they were coming back to help her. When Jim got into the water that morning, something even more amazing happened. Instead of him swimming to Luna, she slowly moved toward him. The huge whale carefully approached Jim, moving so gently that she barely made a ripple in the water. "I've never seen anything like this," Dr. Thompson said, watching through binoculars. "She's actively seeking his help." He quickly called other whale scientists around the world, telling them to watch the live video feed from their drones. Jim started working on the remaining parasites, but today was different. Luna seemed to understand exactly what he needed. When he needed to treat her left side, she would slowly roll that way. When he needed to reach a spot near her tail, she would lift it slightly closer to the surface. Lisa watched Luna's vital signs on her computer. "Her heart rate is completely normal," she announced, surprised. Usually, whales get stressed when humans are this close, but she's totally calm. It's like she knows Jim isn't a threat. The news crews that had gathered to watch the rescue couldn't believe what they were seeing. Their cameras captured everything as Luna and Jim worked together like dance partners who knew each other's moves perfectly. At one point, Jim needed to treat a difficult spot near Luna's eye. This was dangerous because whales are very protective of their eyes. But Luna did something incredible. She closed her eye and turned her head slightly, giving Jim better access to the affected area. She's not just letting him help her, Sarah realized. She's actively helping him help her. She quickly wrote down everything she saw. This kind of behavior had never been documented in whales before. Other scientists watching the live video feed started calling in from around the world. Many of them had studied whales for decades, but none had seen this level of cooperation between a whale and a human. "We need to record everything," Dr. Thompson said. "This changes what we know about whale intelligence." He had teams documenting every movement, every decision Luna made, and how she seemed to understand what Jim was trying to do. As the day went on, they noticed something else unusual. Luna started making soft whale sounds while Jim worked. These weren't the normal sounds whales make. They were quieter, almost like whispers. The underwater microphones picked up these sounds, and whale communication experts started studying them immediately. "These are new vocalizations," one expert radioed in. "She's created special sounds just for this situation. This shows problem-solving intelligence we didn't know whales had." Jim took breaks every few hours, and each time he got out of the water, Luna would wait patiently nearby. She wouldn't swim away or go hunting for food. She seemed to understand that the work wasn't finished yet. During one break, Jim explained what he was experiencing. "She's not just accepting the help," he said, drying off with a towel. "She's thinking about it. When I show her what I'm going to do, she figures out how to make it easier for me. That takes real intelligence. The most surprising moment came late in the afternoon. Jim was working on a particularly difficult patch of parasites when he dropped his medicine container. Before he could swim down to get it, Luna did something astonishing. She dipped her head down, gently caught the container in the current from her movement, and lifted it back up near Jim. "Did you see that?" Sarah shouted excitedly. She just helped him get his equipment back. Everyone watching was amazed. This wasn't just animal behavior. This was thoughtful, helpful action. By the end of the second day, news of Luna's rescue had spread worldwide. Scientists were already calling it one of the most important whale encounters ever recorded. It wasn't just about saving one whale anymore. Luna was teaching them something new about how intelligent whales really are. That evening, as the teams packed up their equipment, Luna swam in a large circle around all the boats, as if saying goodbye for the night. Tomorrow would be the final day of treatment, but today had changed what everyone thought they knew about whales forever. 2 weeks after Jim's daring rescue, Sarah stood at the front of her research boat, watching Luna through her binoculars. The change in the whale was amazing. Where there had once been thousands of parasites, Luna's skin was now almost completely clean. The wounds were healing, leaving only faint marks that would soon disappear. "Look at her jump," Lisa called out excitedly. Everyone rushed to the side of the boat as Luna leaped out of the water, her massive body rising completely into the air before splashing back down. It was something they hadn't seen her do since before she got sick. The drone flying above sent back crystal clear videos of Luna's recovery. Dr. Thompson studied the footage on his computer, shaking his head in amazement. "The healing is happening faster than we ever thought possible," he said. "It's like once we got rid of the parasites, her natural healing powers went into overdrive." Sarah's team had stayed with Luna every day since the rescue, documenting her recovery. They watched as she started eating normally again, diving deep to catch fish and staying underwater for longer periods. Her breathing had returned to normal, and she was swimming with the same strength as a healthy whale. But the most exciting moment came that morning when their underwater microphones picked up familiar sounds. Other whales were nearby. Luna's family pod, which she hadn't been able to keep up with when she was sick, had returned to the area. "Here they come," Tom said, pointing to the drone screen. Everyone watched as 3 other humpback whales swam toward Luna. There was a moment of tension. Would they accept her back after so much time apart? The reunion was better than anyone could have hoped for. Luna swam out to meet her family, and the air filled with whale songs as they greeted each other. The other whales swam close to her, touching her gently with their fins as if checking that she was really okay. "They're welcoming her home," Jim said quietly. He had stayed in the area to watch Luna's recovery, and now he stood with tears in his eyes as he watched the family reunion. The tough rescue diver who had risked his life to save Luna was not ashamed to show how much this moment meant to him. The scientists had attached a small tracking device to Luna, something that would let them follow her movements for the next year without disturbing her. Through this device, they could see that she was diving normally again, swimming at healthy speeds, and keeping up easily with her pod. News of Luna's recovery spread quickly through the scientific community. Research papers were already being written about the rescue, not just about the methods Jim had used to remove the parasites, but about the remarkable way Luna had cooperated with her rescuers. "This changes how we think about whale intelligence," Dr. Thompson explained to a group of reporters who had gathered for a final update. "Luna didn't just accept our help. She understood what we were trying to do and actively participated in her own rescue. This shows a level of intelligence we never knew whales had." The story of Luna's rescue was being used to help other whales too. Scientists around the world were studying Jim's methods, learning how to help sick or injured whales in ways that worked with the whales instead of just working on them. Several other whales had already been saved using similar gentle approaches. A month after the rescue, Sarah's team prepared to say goodbye to Luna. The whale pod was starting their annual migration, heading to warmer waters for the winter. On their last day of observation, Luna did something special. She swam close to their boat, closer than she had ever come before, and lifted her head out of the water, looking directly at them. She sang thank you, Jim said softly, and goodbye. As the sun set on their final day with Luna, they watched her swim away with her pod. The tracking device showed she was swimming strong and fast, keeping perfect pace with her family. The scared, sick whale they had found a month ago was gone, replaced by a healthy, vibrant creature returning to her natural life. Sarah made her final notes in the research log. Luna's story teaches us that sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is not to force our help on others, but to offer it gently and wait for them to accept it. In saving Luna, we learned that whales are not just creatures we need to protect. They are intelligent beings we need to work with and learn from. The next morning, the tracking device showed Luna and her pod swimming far out in the ocean, heading to their winter feeding grounds. She was going to be okay, and thanks to her, many other whales would be helped in new and better ways in the future.